Welcome to the POMcast with Steve Willis, your independent, unbiased, and unbought source for Ole Miss athletics. Good morning, good morning, good morning. October 13th, 2020. I hope everybody is doing well. Here at Positively Ole Miss today, we're going to go over a little bit of the defensive problems. And when people say it's personnel, they kind of use that as a catch-all. They use talent as a crutch, but they never explain why and what is going on defense. They just blanket statement talent and hope that is good enough because everybody's trying to fire the coach or they're saying scheme, and realistically it's all kind of the same thing. But I'll explain a little bit why the defense is not working. So, before we get started, we're going to do a little social media advertising, if y'all don't mind. You can follow us on Twitter at the Stephen Willis or at Ole Positively. You can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/POMcast or join our Facebook group at Positively Ole Miss. You can subscribe to our YouTube page, Positively Ole Miss. Hit the bell for notifications, and you can join us on Twitch at Positively Ole Miss, all one word. But that's another avenue that you can catch what we're doing. Eventually, believe it or not, this is all going to be video. It's going to look like, I don't know, my vision is something like Pardon the Interruption. And I'm investing close to 20 grand into material to make this happen. It's going to look really cool, and it'll be like nothing else on the Ole Miss channels. If you follow Ole Miss sports, this will be, honestly, at first, this will be the technologically advanced show on the Ole Miss coverage arc. Don't want to say beat because, like I said, I say we because I went to school at Ole Miss. I'm on the Letterman's Walk, and I had an office at the Manning Center. I've earned a we. So if audio is your bag, you can catch us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, or Pandora. So join us there. So what I was saying before is that what does talent deficiency mean? Does that mean remember, every player is a system player. Whenever you move forward, every player is a system player. So the vast majority of this front seven, especially this front seven, because on the back end it's kind of the same for both systems. There's less. Let's say there's less differences. But if you take the linebackers, and Lakia Henry, the number 2 player in the country on JUCO, inside linebacker, leading tackler last year, played great at times, Lakia Henry. But in this system, it doesn't seem to work. Everybody's blaming on the defensive line. I hate to break it to everybody. Takarius Tisdale and Ryder Anderson were starters last year on the 3-4 at the beginning of the year. The only difference is Benito. You're replacing the nose guard, and they honestly put a space eater in there. So we're going to look at that linebackers, basically. In the 3-4, those linebackers all pretty much 240, 250, plotting, slower players because their gap responsibility in their run fit is the A gap or the B gap. They don't have far to get to fill that gap. Now, in this defense, they're asked to go a little bit more sideline to sideline. As we've explained to you, this is more of an over-under defense. Not necessarily a 3-4, not necessarily a 4-3. So schematically, it's going to be a player that can do both. Now, it doesn't take much to throw off a whole defense, but 2 or 3 players. So Lakeith Henry, let's say, I'm not blaming him. I'm more using him as an example. He was doing the A and the B gap last year. That's probably 4 yards worth of space he has to eat up in run fits. Now he's asked to scrape. Now he's asked to spill. Now he's asked to move outside to where it's 6, 7, 8 yards difference. And if you notice, our defense is really gashed off tackle. And it's because the linebackers, and especially without Jacquez Jones, who is our most athletic linebacker, can't get there. And I'm not saying it's a talent or athletic ability for them not to get there. There's a possibility of paralysis by analysis, to where they're just trying to diagnose and everything, because they had no spring, they had no fall camp. This is completely legitimate, but this is a major system change on defense. People need to understand that. It's designed for Sam Williams, who missed all of fall camp because of legal issues, who's catching up. He's had 2 sacks in 2 games. And the star, which isn't performing at the moment. But that's the defense. It's designed to funnel a team in such a way. And, you know, we can recruit our way out of it by recruiting faster players. We can recruit body types at defensive line. That is what DJ Durkin and Chris Partridge are looking for. We're talking about a good system that is going into play. It's not the scheme. It's not the fundamentals. This is obviously the best staff that Ole Miss has ever never had. Now, you can say all that to say this is really similar on Ole Miss's defense as what State's going through on offense. It's a major system change, and eventually they will get there. But we're going to have to find players that fit what he wants to do. Instead of 250-pound linebackers, maybe it's more in the 225 range. LSU is going through the same thing too. And we're going to hit on them a little bit after the break, because they're going through the same thing Ole Miss is at the moment. All right. Let's take a short break. Be back in a couple of minutes. POMcast, Stephen Willis. Take care.
Only 10% of us get enough daily exercise.
And that number is dropping.
Nearly 30% of us are overweight or obese.
We spend 6 hours a day in front of a screen. As a result, we now have a shorter life expectancy than our parents.
But give us the right start in sports, and we'll never stop.
Learn how at active4life.ca.
Hey, this is Stephen Willis from Positively Ole Miss. We're almost done with this break. We'll be back with good information quite soon.
The military has been in every generation of my family, and so has VA. It wasn't easy for my dad after Vietnam, but VA helped him and my mom get the home they'd always wanted. My grandpa's been coming to VA since World War II. They even helped him lay to rest one of his battle buddies from Normandy. And me, I followed in their footsteps and served with pride. And now that I'm out of the military, the GI Bill's helping me with school. Every generation of my family has served, and VA has served us all.
Welcome back, POMcast. Stephen Willis. Thanks for tuning in on YouTube, Facebook, and a plethora of devices. Thanks a lot for doing that. What we're talking about today are systems. Every player, like we say, is a system player. A quarterback is a system player. A running back is a system player. There's a certain type of each position group that fits what is being called, what is being implemented. You take LSU. They won the national championship, and we all can say that last year defensively they were a boss. And there's talent all over the field, including probably the best college football player in the country on defense. And they are 1-2 with losses to Mississippi State and Missouri. They did beat Vanderbilt. And they're giving up a ton of yards. Why? Well, they moved from Dave Aranda's 3-4, like I said, with the plotting front seven, to Bo Pelini's 4-3, which is more sideline to sideline. You're asking bigger players that have been recruited for 3 years to cover in space. You're asking bigger players to make tackles in a larger box than they were previously doing or able to do. Now, this whole system of recruiting rankings and everything all comes from the NFL draft stuff from back in the 80s. Back when everybody basically ran the same offense, and maybe it was 2 different schemes. You had the Walsh School and you had the Parcells School. But whenever we were doing that, every team looked exactly alike. Every team ran a pro-style offense. Every team ran a pro-style defense. It might be 4-3 or 3-4, but it was all 2-gap. And it was the same system. It was more of an over and under thing. And recruiting rankings about 20 years ago picked up on that same thing. Now, it doesn't allow for the lack of homogeny in college football, because there's always been many different systems in college football. But that's where it comes from, recruiting rankings. They go and see a player at a combine. This is going to sound familiar. Or in a camp setting, and make a choice. The difference is they're probably not as well versed because there's so many different types of things. Why is Army and Navy and Air Force always able to beat people every year? Because they run a system that nobody else runs, which is going to require different types of players that nobody else are recruiting. But those players are going to be viewed as a 2-star, or less, on the recruiting services, because they are only rating a certain type of player. That's the thing that we need to understand, because national media is going to refer to schools in the simplest possible terms, and local media are going to follow their lead. So the narrative is going to be a fairly simple description of what is going on, but the reality is there's a big system change going on, and that we have to adapt. And sorry about that. My puppy dog is going crazy. But we need to understand that. Now, it is not okay to give up 50 points a game. It is not okay to give up 650 yards a game. Nobody's saying that it is. But program-wise, this should have been expected. We were always behind on the defensive side of the ball when the coaching change took over. And they didn't have all those extra hours or extra film leading up to the first game. And lo and behold, we have 2 top 5 opponents in the first 3 games. The team is going to get better because they are going to speed up through reading and reaction. Athletically, I don't think they're as bad as it's being put on tape at the moment. But as the talent level declines, so will their production level, so to speak. Now, we were talking about LSU earlier. They played Missouri, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt in the first 3 games. Probably not an easier 3-game stretch in the SEC that can be scheduled at the moment. And they went 1-2. Their offense isn't what it was last year. There's really only one weapon on offense. There's no 7. And defensively, they look slow plodding and struggling man coverage because the system they were recruited to is no longer there. They might have been a top 10 class defensively, but now that they've changed systems, it's probably closer to 30 or 40. I mean, people don't understand it's that big of a jump. And they just want to say, oh, we got to fire the coach. The scheme is bad. The players are bad. They know something doesn't look right, but they don't understand what or why. Systems are so important to football. You look at the NFL, the Baltimore Ravens with Joe Flacco was a normal pro-style system and everything, but they got Lamar Jackson and decided to build a system around him because he would not be a good NFL quarterback in a pro-style system. He would be the MVP in this system. The Chiefs put the air raid and doing different things with Patrick Mahomes. They're not running standard pro-style stuff. He probably would not be a great quarterback in a normal system. You can't put him in, say, San Diego's and expect the same results. Jordan Herbert, or whatever his last name is. I'm real close to the Saints, I'm sorry. They run a strictly pro-style system that he is better off in that system than he was even in the spread offense he ran at Oregon. It's more of a fit. Everything is about fit. Everything is about system. If for some reason in 2 years Lane Kiffin wants to run off DJ Durkin, you need to recruit a system that is similar to DJ Durkin because your personnel demands it. Or else you will drop down and you will get fired and will start the rotation that Ole Miss has been on for about 40 years at this point. That's the reality. That's the real. We're at a point now that we are more excited than we've been at any point since probably 2015. And before 2015, that's probably the most excited we've ever been in our Ole Miss fandom for those that weren't alive during the Vault heyday. But as fans, we have to recognize that system plays an important part in everything we do. Our personnel is recruited to the system. Once we have our personnel in the system, it can be the best version of the system. But we can't change the system without starting over. That's the point. You're looking at a defense that has a bunch of players that were fundamentally unsound with Wesley McGriff. A bunch of players that are recruited for the 3-4 defense. That's 2 different style of players. And this year's recruiting, which they're doing a good job of basically just not getting any of this year on him. Just wait until spring practice when you can work with them. Their eligibility clock isn't going, and go. I'm talking about DeSanto Rollins, Mark Britt, those guys. But this recruiting class even was recruited, especially the December class, the ones that signed early, were recruited for the 3-4 defense. They were recruited for Mike McIntyre. That's the defensive scheme. I mean, that is why Jonathan Haynes, who started 11 games last year, hardly sees the field at the moment. Of course, I would argue for this defense, especially at star, we need to get a little bigger out there because we're having trouble with the linebackers getting to set the edge. I honestly, we need somebody out there that can set the edge and force people back inside because we're actually pretty good inside. Because those players can hit those gaps. Those players can do what they're supposed to do. And it's going to get better, guys. That's the point. Don't look at this defense and don't do a data point and stretch out to infinity because that never works. That might be the standard operating procedure of journalists, but that never works. Every game is an individual data point. You can't really do that. This is how it was, this is how it's always going to be. No, it's individually data points. You can look for trends, but you can't just do blanket infinity judgments. All right. Stephen Willis, POMcast. Thanks for listening.
You want to answer that, don't you? I bet it's just killing you seeing the soft glow just inches away. Someone wants to tell you something or ask you something. Oh, come on, answer it already! Just so we're clear, that wasn't my fault. Next time, ignore your inner voice. Don't text and drive. A message from Florida's trusted choice independent insurance agents.
Hey, this is Stephen Willis. I just want you to stick around a little longer. We're going to get back to the podcast right after these messages.
Tonight, nearly 40,000 veterans across the country are homeless. These men and women have pledged to serve our nation, and now we must serve them. Landlords across the country have helped make significant progress in reducing veteran homelessness by making housing available, but there is more that we can do to bring our veterans home. Visit www.va.gov/homeless to see how you can get involved. And if you are a veteran and you are experiencing homelessness, please call 877-4AID-VET. Thank you.
All right, POMcast on this Tuesday morning. I am Stephen Willis. Thanks for joining us today. Also, give us a follow on Twitter, a like on Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. So, I was talking in the first break about what we plan to be, and that is kind of important because right now everybody and all these sources are going out to video channels, as y'all notice, and everybody is looking at it. It's like, why would you do that? Why would you do audio on a video source? It's hard to do. It's not going to pick up a lot of views, and that is by design. Like what we are doing at the moment is getting used to a format. If you notice the breaks, we're talking for 7-8 minutes at a time, which was difficult for me because of the freaking 18-hour surgery I went in, and I was on a ventilator the whole time. And believe it or not, that does some real damage to you talking. And David Johnson was on it for 45 days. I was only on it for a day. But you can hear a little bit of it in my voice. And you have to relearn how to talk and not use all the crutch words that you have always used. but it affects. But you have to practice. You have to do it. If David's listening, he really needs to jump back in and start doing it, no matter what he sounds like now, because he's going to get a little better, like I have over the last month. He's going to get a little better, and that will help him in the future, and it will speed up his get back to normal. So we've talked about systems a lot today. We've done actually little on Arkansas, done a lot on our defense, and we talked about systems and why this is a problem. Everybody's going to say, well, there's no problem in the offense. Well, the offense kind of fit what he was doing already. Jerry and Ely, Snoop Connor, the Elijah Moore slot, the big outside receivers. We recruited those for a while, especially the offensive line. Caleb Warren, good job, buddy. That was a heck of a game Saturday, and you could have been the catalyst for the turnaround in the run game, so congratulations. But it's going to get better, everybody. Arkansas's defense is the mirror of our offense. They do the same thing. Kendall Briles does the same thing. He picked up on his stuff from Lane at FAU with a mixture of the Baylor system. They're going to go fast at times. They're going to go slow. They're not quite where we are at the moment. They have a slot receiver. I think his name is Warren. That's pretty good. And, of course, the outside receivers are as well. So I expect them to scheme up some good stuff, especially against our defense. But we are now looking at a situation where the talent of the players drops way down. So I expect the defense to start growing. The last 3 weeks have been drinking from the fire hose for them. Starting this week, it'll start to slow down. Arkansas, then Auburn, then Vanderbilt, then South Carolina. Those are games that you can start to build on. But that's kind of what I'm looking at from Arkansas. I think Ole Miss is going to win by 2 scores. Well, they should. Fayetteville is a house of horrors, so it would not be the first time that we went up there expecting to win and didn't, and something went wrong. Remember, in Fayetteville, I don't know if it was in 2002 or 2001, Arkansas scored a touchdown on a kickoff. Think about that. There's just weird stuff happens up there. In the great Jim Walter home in the sky. Donald Reynolds Razorback Stadium. We've had some pretty bad experiences up there, but we have some pretty good experience against Arkansas with first-year coaches. And I think the last first-year coach to lose might have been Cutcliffe. Or Orgeron. Sorry about that, Orgeron. But starting back with Nutt in 2008, moving on to Freeze in 2012, and doing Matt Luke in 2017. Ole Miss, I think, Ole Miss, I believe, Arkansas won that game. Never mind. The last one to lose was Matt Luke. I keep thinking Little Rock was the first game he had against Arkansas. Maybe it's the first after he got the job and wasn't the interim. Well, anyway. But we've gone over today systems and why that's important, and the different factors and the different errors that go with recruiting rankings and why they can't be just blanket followed. All they are is for entertainment purposes only. There's no real. Anybody can see a 5-star player. It's not that special. Anyway, thanks for listening today. I'm Stephen Willis for the POMcast on the Positively Ole Miss Network. See you tomorrow.